Today I'm going to give you a little tour of our studio garage space. Over the past few weeks we've been getting quite a few questions about what it is that we do and why we've got such a random collection of cars. So the plan today is to show you around our custom built studio to give you a little idea of what's inside. Me and my wife Huge started many years ago photographing weddings, and since then we've photographed and shot all sorts of things, from television documentaries, commercial pieces and even YouTube films. We're in our reception room right now, and we've always had a passion for all things automotive, so even before we began hiring cars out, we would often have little automotive memorabilia pieces dotted about, this being a really good example. This wheel belonged to Felipe Massa, and then we decided to paint it in our favourite Brazilian racing car driver's colours. Our main line of business is photography and film, and this is where all the post-production happens. Whether it's photography or film, everything comes through to be edited in this very room. It's a little bit quiet at the moment, but there's usually a few more people in here. Once out of the edit suite and back into the reception area, we're behind our huge reception desk, which is perfect for Steve to hide behind. Steve is the guy that you will speak to if you ever hire a car from us, and he knows everything there is to know about all the cars we have. Moving on to the meeting room, where we've got more motorsport memorabilia. Oh, and my wife Huge, working away. You all right? In here we've got a early 90s Formula 1 tyre which used to belong to Michael Schumacher, and it makes the perfect coffee table. This is just what we like to do with Formula 1 tyres and wheels in this place. But they do make really good coffee tables. On the wall we've got a neon sign with a really famous quote. For all you Formula 1 fans, you'll definitely, or you should recognise who this is from. I admire work, dedication and competence, although I believe there's a little bit missing off the start, which should be, I have no idols. And of course it's from Ayrton Senna, and those words really remind me of his determination. We bought this building back in mid-2016, and at the time it was in a bit of a sorry state. There was so much work that needed doing, and it was almost verging on the borders of being derelict, but nevertheless we thought it would make the ideal spot to house all of our cars and everything that we need for our photo and film. You just one with all of the design sense, and most of the aesthetics that you see in this place are all her ideas, whilst I was more focused on having a space big enough to put all of our cars, or certainly the amount of cars that we had at the time. We began by designing the reception area, which you've just seen, and we were really keen on these glass panels. We wanted these to create the open space, and it's really good for when you collaborate on projects that you can just shout between one room and the other. The meeting room was a space that we wanted to be quite open and friendly. We didn't want a traditional boardroom with desks and tables in that you'd sit behind. We wanted a space where you could sit and have lunch, hold meetings, do Zoom calls, and just have a bit of a chill and watch the telly. These bricks are all fake, and they're to help with the atmosphere. Well, the reclaimed bricks, which have been cut and fitted just like tiles, just to create that rustic vibe. And then of course the kitchen. Designing the kitchen was quite straightforward because there were only two things that really mattered. One, that there was a kettle, and two, that there was a cupboard big enough for all of our pot noodles, because this is what keeps us all going throughout the entire year. Moving from the kitchen, we go into possibly the room that caused the most controversy when it came to the design, and that's the garage. One of the major problems that we had here is the ground level of the building is much higher than what the ground level of outside is, so we needed to come up with a way of raising the groundworks outside so we'd be able to drive all four cars into the building. Not only that, but this opening didn't exist. So we needed to add a lot of extra steel to the structure in order for us to create such a big opening. So let me show you around our cars, and we're going to start with quite possibly the fastest car that we own, and it's definitely the most reliable. It's this. A little Bagheera. This is something that my dad bought us a few years ago, and we've had it painted in the same colours as one of our vintage wedding cars. So moving on to the proper cars, this is the 1993 Jurassic Park Jeep, and we've recently done a film on this where I kind of explained the whole process of how it is that I came to put a bid on this vehicle without telling my wife whilst we were watching Jurassic World, and then having to try and convince her that it'd be a really good idea, which actually was a really easy convince, and she was well on board for it, which is perfect. The Jeep sat here because it's the shortest of all the cars that we own, so it makes getting in and out of the office space much easier. And sat next to this is the slightly longer Aston Martin DB9. We recently did a film on this car where we took it for an MOT and a bit of a health check after I'd left it standing here for over a year during lockdown, and it started first time and it passed with flying colours. So this is one of my favourite cars, and a car that is just a little bit special. Next to the DB9, we've got the perfect match. These two cars look absolutely incredible together. It's the Land Rover Defender, and this is the 110. Now, we bought this car sight unseen, and it was a vehicle that we'd wanted for so many years. They're so cool, they're so iconic. And when this one came up for sale and it had all the aftermarket bits on, it seemed like a no-brainer. So we put a bid on it and we won the car. Although when it arrived, there were a few bits that I didn't spot in the photos. There were a few bits of the bodywork that just needed a little bit of attention. So initially, I was a little bit disappointed when we first took ownership of this car. I then decided to get it booked in for the body shop because I've got a little bit of OCD and I like everything to be perfect. And as you know, if you watch the very first film that we created on this YouTube channel, it then got stolen at the body shop. So the ownership of this vehicle has been a little bit troubled, and I've not fully really appreciated what it's like to own this car. Moving on from this car is where things start to get a little bit strange, and for all you car fanatics out there, this is where you may want to switch off, because I'm going to introduce a car to you that you may think is a Ford Model A, and you'd be right in thinking that because it does look a little bit like a Ford Model A, but it's not. It's fiberglass. This is the first wedding car that I'm going to introduce to you, and sure, wedding cars are a little bit odd because they aren't original cars. Well, some of them are. We obviously have our Daimler DS420, which we use as a wedding car, but these vehicles are all replicas. But let me explain why I think these vehicles are far better for the purposes of a wedding than what an actual Ford Model A or a real, authentic, classic Rolls-Royce would be. This is the very first wedding car we bought, and it's actually built on a Ford Granada. And that means that all the parts and the running gear and the bits that we need to maintain and repair this vehicle are quite readily available, and most bits can be bought straight off the shelf, which is ideal when you've got a vehicle that's working every weekend. Now, the nice thing about these custom-built wedding cars compared to their more classic brothers and sisters, the authentic Ford Model A and Rolls-Royces, is that it's been designed with the bride and a groom in mind, so the ease of access is really good. The doors are a little bit wider than what they would be in the original cars. The seats are a little bit bigger. They are designed for people with a wedding dress. We've got roofs that fold down in a matter of seconds. For me, the biggest attraction to these fake cars or these fiberglass cars is that if you imagine owning one of these original cars, which are very precious and you want to look after really, really well, a little bit like what we look after our Aston Martin or our Defender, the cars that we want to keep forever, when they get damaged, and they do get damaged because brides wear heels the size of scaffold, then you're not too fussed because we can just take this to the body shop, we can get it repaired, and it can get back out at the weekend. However, if your Rolls-Royce bodywork gets damaged by some Jimmy Choos, then you're quite annoyed. You may have noticed the two Williams side pods on the wall behind me, and this is car number 11 of Rubens Barrichello, whilst there's no points for guessing the owner of this vehicle, number 12. Any ideas? The Williams driver of this era, with all damage to his car every race? Pastor Maldonado. I believe this damage is from a shunt that he had with Lewis Hamilton, so there's a bit of Hamilton rubber. Once outside, we've got some more cars stowed under our lean-to, and this part of the building is really, really handy in the winter because we can valet all of our cars and service them when the weather's not great. And being in England, the weather's not great most of the time, so this is a really good space for us and something that we were really keen on adding into the structure of the building while we were designing it. This is called an Asquith, and this is possibly one of my favourite wedding cars because although it is a replica and it does have fiberglass bodywork, It's a little bit special. The Asquith company made a few variations of these cars, and it's built on a late 80s transit van. When we bought this a few years ago, it didn't look anything like this whatsoever. It was maroon. Since owning it, we've changed it quite considerably. We've added windows, we've added different types of seats, and it's become one of our most popular wedding cars. I think it's a bit of a shame that Asquiths aren't built anymore. These were built on brand new Ford Transit van chassis with new running gear and new engines, and they were made for clients all over the world. I believe some were shipped up to Disneyland in Tokyo. The car in front is an Imperial Viking, and this is based on a 1920s style, although I don't believe it's based on anything particular, not like the Badsworth, which is supposed to look like a Ford Model A. But I quite like that about this car, because people often ask, what is it? Is it a Rolls-Royce? Is it a Daimler? Well, I always say, take a guess, and you should be able to tell what car this is just by turning it over. Now, there shouldn't be any points for guessing what's under the hood of this car the moment you hear the sound of that engine. It's unmistakably a London taxi cab. That make you jump? A little bit. Sat in front of the Imperial is usually our Daimler, but in our last film I did explain that I was taking it to the garage for an MOT. There's a little bit more work required than an MOT, so it's not back yet. So in its place is our daily driver, the Mercedes V-Class. And we've made a film on this to explain why I think it's the perfect daily driver. Moving forward, things start to get a little bit less interesting. We've got our long wheelbase Mercedes Sprinter, which is something that we use as a bit of a workhorse for everything business related. But I must say, I really enjoy driving this van, and if it's not too dull, we should maybe do a review on this at some point in the future. We're now back to where we started the film at the front of the building, and as you can see, we're pretty much out of space. Now, we do have a new wedding car on order, and it should be with us in a couple of months' time. So when that arrives, plus when the Daimler's back from the mechanics, goodness knows where we're going to put all these vehicles. If you've liked it and enjoyed this content, then please like and subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.